The one quote I want to read you, because I think it is so relevant to where we are today, is one of the things that really shaped my own thinking. This is from Abraham Lincoln. You know, Lincoln didn't become president to fight a civil war. He had no real military background except a few weeks in the militia during the Black Hawk War. He was a lawyer. He'd never run anything bigger than a law office with one partner. Suddenly he finds himself organizing the United States. And he finds that it's not going very well. It's very painful. There are very bloody battles. And so in December of 1862, he writes to the Congress the following: "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country." Well, what I want to show you for just a couple minutes is, I think, in the Lincoln tradition. Because this is new and different. We have to repeal Obamacare to get the economy growing again and to preserve our freedom, but then we have to find very serious, substantial reforms because the old system wasn't working either. And the reforms have to be designed so that we dramatically lower the cost of health care, we increase your involvement as a patient, we increase the doctor-patient relationship without micromanagement from Washington. We have much clearer market effects where people know price, they know quality, they have a sense of involvement. All those things have to happen. Second, we need to go back to job creation. You cannot have a citizen-based free society if the citizens can't find work, because they inevitably become dependent. I say about President Obama regularly, he is the best food stamp president in American history. This is not a compliment. Because I think the left would like every American to be dependent on government. That's the end of citizenship. If the government takes care of you, the government ultimately will control you. And so America only works when Americans are working. Furthermore, if you want to balance the budget, the most powerful single step is to get people off of food stamps, off of Medicaid, off of unemployment, off of welfare, into a job where they're taking care of their family and paying taxes. I know this, I've done it twice now. I did it with Reagan in 80-81, and as Speaker. When I entered as Speaker, we had 5.6% unemployment. When I left, it was at 4.2%. Interesting number, but I didn't know this till last week. Brady Cassis, our research director, found it. When I entered the speakership, the Congressional Budget Office projected deficit was $2.7 trillion over 10 years. When I left the speakership, the projected surplus was $2.2 trillion. That's a swing of about 4.9 trillion, and if you take the larger economy you have today, the swing for the same percentage, the swing would be around 8 trillion. That was in 4 years. So start down this road. How do you create jobs? Well, here's a number that should... I'm amazed the Obama White House can't get this. In September of 1983, exactly the same point in Reagan's first term. Reagan got a bad economy from Carter. Obama got a bad economy from Bush. The difference is Reagan understood real leadership is not complaining about having gotten it. Real leadership is fixing it. In this month, in 1983, the American people created 1,100,000 new jobs. Last month we created 0. And you think somebody in the White House would stop and say, gee, I wonder how they created 1,100,000 jobs in 1 month. Well, he did 4 things. Cut taxes, cut regulations, develop American energy, and praise the people who create jobs. Obama's over here with class warfare, attacking everybody who creates jobs and wondering why they don't create jobs. Well, why would you? Is the American energy production. Tax and regulation, pretty straightforward. Give every American a choice of an optional flat tax if you want it. There's 1 page, here's what I earned, here's what I'm paying, it's done. Or you keep the current code. The reason I want to go this route is I watched Steve Forbes, I think he learned the hard way, and now believes, you can't pass a pure flat tax, because people will not trust politicians enough to give up all their So I'm going to say, you're fine. You want to keep with the current code and all the complexity, all the paperwork, be my guest. You want a simple flat tax rate. 2, zero capital gains. If we had zero capital gains tax, you would have hundreds of billions of dollars flooding into this country. You'd be opening up new factories, creating new jobs, starting new companies overnight. 3, 100% expensing on all new equipment. If you're a farmer, if you're a factory, if you're a doctor, if you're an office, if you buy equipment, you write it off in 1 year. The reason is very practical. We want the American worker to be the most modern, most productive worker in the world. 4, 12.5% corporate tax rate. There's $1.2 trillion in American profits tied up overseas. They will not bring it home at a 35% tax rate. At 12.5%, our estimate is $700 or $800 billion will come home. Furthermore, I tell my liberal friends, at 12.5%, we'll actually get more money out of General Electric. I mean, think about it. Right now, 35% is profitable for GE to hire 375 tax lawyers. And by the way, remember that the head of General Electric is the president's senior advisor. So the president talks about loopholes. Remember, the General Electric loopholes are the green tax credits the president likes. I mean, it's important to understand what all this loophole language means when you get to Washington. So I don't want to hear the president, by the way, rushing around saying he wants to get rid of anything. So everybody picks their own selective game to play. At 12.5%, it's cheaper for GE to fire the lawyers and write the check. Pretty straightforward. Finally, permanently abolish the death tax because you want families that are successful, focused on job creation, not focused on tax avoidance. That's the tax rate. Regulatory. 1, repeal the Dodd-Frank bill, which is a very destructive bill. If Obamacare, you repealed Dodd-Frank, the economy would start moving the following morning. Because Dodd-Frank kills small banks, cripples small business, depresses housing values, and is enormously corrupting in the Treasury Department's micromanagement of the big banks. I mean, you can't possibly have that much bureaucratic power in Washington over the big banks without corruption. So, beyond that, replace the Environmental Protection Agency with an Environmental Solutions Agency. Very important. Let me give you 2 examples. I think the EPA cannot be reformed. I think the EPA has for 2 generations selected people out because they are radicals who oppose normal American life and they seek to impose their values by regulation. And I think about half the time they're nuts. Now you may think that's too strong a word. Let me give you 2 examples. One, Senator Grassley was talking about. The EPA now is developing regulations on dust. Okay. Now, I just want you to think this. You're sitting in a Washington office. You rode the metro in. You came up the elevator. You're sitting in air conditioning. You're looking around. You're saying to yourself, I don't know that dirt roads ought to be dusty. You turn to your friends and you say to them, have any of you ever been on a dirt road? And one of them says, well, I once walked along the canal, but I didn't see much dust. And so you collectively get together and go, why don't we impose this new rule that farmers should not create dust? Now, this person has never been out gathering hay. They've never been out processing corn. They've never been out on a dirt road. They haven't got a clue what they're talking about. But they're not sure. So they want to be careful and not be silly. So they go down the hall and they knock on the door of their friend who's currently working on the milk contamination regulation. Now, I don't know if you know this, but for years, the Congress has been suppressing a milk contamination rule, which starts with the premise that the chemistry of milk is sort of a little bit like the chemistry of gasoline, and therefore dairy farms should build berms in order to contain milk if it gets spilled the way we contain gasoline. Because otherwise, you know how totally out of touch with the real world we have to be to write these things? So I think you replace it, you don't repair it, you hire all new people, you start with a couple of simple tests. Do you think the economy matters too? Okay. Are you willing to collaborate with local towns and assume that they may like their neighborhood as much as you do? Especially if you've never been in their state. Do you have common sense? I mean, there are a series of sophisticated tests for this new environmental system. In addition to that, the current Food and Drug Administration with a brand new 21st century model. It's very simple. You want the FDA to be in the laboratory, learning the new science, and taking it to the patient as rapidly as possible. Instead of being a major inhibitor of progress, the FDA's job should be to accelerate progress. It'll save lives, it will reduce costs, and the largest market in the world is going to be healthcare. And if we could be the dominant figures in healthcare, we will create an amazing number of high-value jobs. So that gives you a framework.